keep talking.
Okay.
Can we go on without you, Abby? I don't know.
I think yeah. Had to do it before.
Okay, so we are live.
Okay, does anybody have the questions pulled up? You want me to pull them up real quick?
I have them pulled up.
Okay, do you want to read them off?
Yeah, sure. So the first question.
We need to go through the names.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Mitzi Busaith from Pennsylvania.
I'm Abby Smith from Anchorage, Alaska.
I'm Carly Lish from North Carolina.
I'm Chantel Howard. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah.
I'm Chriselle Shirtliff. I'm from Denver, Colorado.
So, Carly, are you going to be our moderator because you have the questions up?
Sure. So our first question is, which of these readings do you side with more and why?
For me, it was a no-brainer. This is Mitzi. I mean, I feel very strongly about what Sister Beck said, and I agree with her a lot on all of her points because it seems to be doctrinal and gospel-based. Fits into the plan.
I also agree with Sister Beck because I feel like she was 100% right and not just partly or mostly. And there was a lot of things that the other women said that I agreed with, but not 100% and not on everything.
Yeah,
I feel the same way.
Something that, so in my Family 430 class, we were kind of talking about this, about kind of gender equality or inequality or whatever. And it's very interesting because do you guys know the Hebrew word for helpmeet?
Oh, I've heard it before, but I can't remember.
It means the mere opposite. And so, like, I have a hard time when people are, like, always wanting to combine men and women into, like, one gender or whatever, because then you take away the very plan of Heavenly Father, you know, the very purpose and distinctions between men and women. I think the difference is that they're equally important, but their roles and their characteristics are different.
I remember once when I served in a primary presidency how every person in our presidency had a different gift and a different ability. And when we were able to work together, as we worked together, it was just phenomenal what we could achieve because everything was met, and it wasn't one person being the same to everything. And that's how I feel marriage is. The difference between men and women is that we need what both offers to be good leaders, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
oh, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree with Abby that there were things that sounded right, but it's kind of the answer to the next question is I didn't think that their tone was gospel based at all. It was more personality. It was all selfishness based, actually. I thought.
Didn't you notice that they were attacking us a little bit? Like, why did they bring up the 2,000 stripling warriors and how they were evil? Like, that's kind of random in their whole women stand point. I'm like,
yeah.
Should I read off the second question so we can just?
Yeah.
Sure.
What did you think was the tone and focus of What Women Know, the What Women Know article? Did you see any of the philosophies of men mingled with doctrine? If so, where?
I think their whole focus was on the individual rather than so many societies are about collectivism, so it's about the whole family and the whole society, where they're taking the approach that, this is about me, this is what I want, this is what I need to get done, this is what makes me happy, rather than being a part of a team.
Yeah, it's true. There's a video that was just kind of brought out about the studies of families, and something that women are having a hard time with is they're all coming forward and saying, my husbands just don't listen to me, you know, and stuff, and they just don't do what I'm telling them to do and stuff. And finally, like, this psychologist was able to get them to realize, hey, you need to relinquish some control. You know, like, it's a team effort. You know, like, both of you are going to have different opinions, you're going to have different perceptions, but you're working as a team for the family, and you have to take in everybody's perceptions.
I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me was like the first sentence or the first like little paragraph talking about nurturing. It's like fathers as well, fathers can nurture, and it's not confined just to the home, which is true, that's true, but it should be focused in the home. Like, and so it just comes off as like this negative, like, oh, just because you want to focus nurturing on women in the home, it's awful because that's not where it all needs to be taking place. But we know that that's where it needs to be focused because that's where learning takes place. That's where we teach our children. And I don't know. The first sentence, I was like, okay. Cool.
Going along with that, that's what I thought. I feel like this article is more on just like fathers and mothers. Like in Sister Beck's talk, she didn't say like, it's just women that do this. It's just women. Like, because it's not. It's a team effort. Sometimes you're going to fail in a little bit of an area. Like right now with finals, cleaning my house is the last thing that's on my mind. Like, my husband's helping out all the time, but like it's a team effort. And in this, it's trying to say like that it's both genders, and yeah, it is both genders. But Sister Beck's trying to just kind of help us like understand and realize like it's the women's ultimate like, well, yeah, we're gonna fail. And heaven forbid, like, there's talks, it's not asked, or one of these, like, it almost seemed like that, like, women have to be perfect in all of this from the What Women Know. And it's not, like, there's many talks out there that include, like, just keep trying, it's not all just going to come at once.
I think that they kept focusing on guilt. You know, people shouldn't be making us feel guilty. We shouldn't have to be perfect. Our children shouldn't have to be well dressed if that's not what we want. And I don't think that's what Sister Beck was saying at all. I thought she was, showing an example of conviction and commitment. But so, what do you think about the guilt factor?
Well, I think she was like the What Women Know. I felt like they were more taking the attacking stance than they were trying to, like, even bring out any of the flaws, because there wasn't any. You know, it was just more like attacking, like, well, she's saying this, and really, like, she wasn't. You know, like you guys were saying, I agree. Like, she wasn't saying that women have to be perfect, but yet they were sitting there and tearing her talk apart on things that she wasn't saying. You know, and so I'm like, wait a second, you know, like this is more of a antagonistic argument than it is I don't know, like a lit review or whatever they were trying to do.
I think a lot of their argument,
go ahead, Carly.
Their argument is coming from like insecurity almost. Like it feels like, oh, well, I feel like I'm failing in this part, so obviously, like, I don't know. I just feel like they sound really insecure because the church isn't asking you, the gospel of Christ isn't asking you to be perfect. Like, we are all, like, struggling in one way or another, but I feel like they're just like, oh, we can't do this, but that's not what the gospel is asking. And that's not what Sister Beck was even talking about. Like, she wasn't saying, like, you have to. It's like, it's a trying. It's a day-by-day effort, and it just seems like they're really insecure in their ability to try to be successful.
That's so true. What really stood out, I really loved how Sister Beck was talking about, you know, the families that will do everything they can to have nice clothes for church, and that they took it as like, oh, if you're not nice dressed at church, then why are you even going to church? But really, we prepare ourselves and we do our best to look good when we go to church, because that's a way of showing respect and reverence to the Lord, and not trying to one-up anybody or be better than anybody else, but just to show that the Lord is worth more than going in flip-flops and jeans. And we do want to wear clean clothes because we want to show that He is worth it.
Well, and isn't it interesting? I kind of, hearing what you guys are saying, kind of makes me think that of atonement. You know, that's something that we have, they didn't, that they don't have. They don't fully comprehend. You know, and so that's what makes Sister Beck's talk so doable, is because we know that, you know, it's going to be through the atonement, it's going to be applying those principles, it's going to be through him that we're going to accomplish this amazing, you know, our amazing divine potential. And because they don't have that, or they don't have a comprehension of that, they become more offensive, or they become, oh, I have to justify myself some way because I can't reach that. And it's like, well, you can. You just need to understand the atonement, you know.
So much of it is the frame of mind, you know, that if you, I was reading Sister Beck from a gospel point of view, and the other women were reading it from a personal point of view, and based on their need to be equal, their women's lib stuff.
I think it goes perfectly to the next question. I don't know. I just have what it was our. What's the question for the third one, Carly? I only wrote part of it down in my notes.
If there were a document titled "What God Knows About Women and Mothers," which of the two articles you read would most closely resemble that?
Anyway, so I was thinking, you know, what do we know about our role as women? And I think that, you know, because we will at this, reading Sister Beck's as a doctrine rather than trying to find it as personally, like, as a feminist, like extreme feminist, that we do understand that our role is divine and it is special and we are unique and important as women, and there's nothing wrong with us working in the home and nurturing children and knowing that that is what we need to do, and it doesn't make us less. And I think that when people say, oh, you just have to have children, that's when they think that they as an individual are less important.
That's interesting.
I had a lady who sat next to me in my, like, a lot of my classes actually here at school, and she was like a staunch feminist and super into like equal rights, which is, you know, it's interesting up here at BYU Idaho. I mean, like, I know a lot of feminists, but like she's like hardcore. So after the women's conference, at the last general conference, the women's conference, she said that she was offended by something, and I don't even remember what it was, but she told me what offended her, and she's like, that doesn't apply to all women and blah blah. And I was like, no, but like, if you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, like, you don't have to be offended. That's not what she meant to say, and like, don't freak out, like she meant it in love. And she just got really quiet. And it's just like, to me, with the article, I think that Sister Beck definitely most resembles like what God knows about women and mothers, and that the other one was just written because they were offended and they didn't look at it with, you know, like we were talking about, with the understanding of the atonement, with that spiritual standpoint in mind. So
I thought it was interesting when I was just newly married. It was, feminists were just really starting. Women were just starting to choose a career. You know, a majority of women, and it was very interesting that after they reached the age of 40 or something, they started saying, "Oh, gee, we're lonely. We wish we had children." And you know, they realize that they've given up something, and they're probably realizing it's much easier to have a child when you're 20 instead of 40. But I think that ties into what God knows of women. I think that there's that inborn nature that we need to nurture, we need to care, we need to love, we need to teach, and that's what comes from having children and raising a family. So I just think it's interesting that even those who rebelled recognize that value.
I did my research paper on voluntarily childless mothers or women, and the majority of them are well educated, you know, and kind of want that philosophy spread everywhere. But the problem, the more I'm reading of their papers and the more that I'm seeing what they're saying, it sounds a lot like this article we read about, you know, what women know. They're just justifying. You know, they're justifying of what they know to be true, but they're going against through trying to be more educated than the next man. You know, like, it's kind of sad when you look at it, but you have to, like, you know, you have to realize that, you know, like, it's truth. You know, truth never becomes old-fashioned.
Mm.
You know, like I can't tell you how many times here in Denver I've gone to the doctor's office and like they are like, you have 2 boys like 2 years apart. What are you thinking? Like I had one lady who was like, you want to have another one? Because we were talking about having another one, and I'm like, well, yeah. And she's like, are you crazy? Like she literally told that, like said that to me, and I'm getting that philosophy wherever I go. Like it's almost like I'm like judged or looked down upon because I have kids, and it's kind of sad, but that's the way, the world's turning,
Well, if you get up to 8 or 9 kids, then everybody's going to start saying, "Oh, bless you, oh, bless you." I think you're amazing. That's what my sister has experienced. When she first started having her kids, it was kind of that, really, you're having more, and now it's just, oh, bless you. So, go for an equal dozen. You can do it.
The next question is, what do you know a woman's role to be in our Father's plan?
We kind of talked a little bit about that already.
I'm just so grateful to know that I am a daughter of God, and His plan for me works really, really well for me, and I'm just grateful for that. I have never felt diminished. I've never felt uncherished, and we're His daughters, and what a blessing to be His. I love being a daughter of my earthly father, and I love it even more of being a daughter of my heavenly Father. There's a beautiful book by, I don't remember her first name, Nunes. It's her last name. It's called Daughter of a King. It's a picture book. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's such a beautiful story of what life is about to me. I think it's just gorgeous.
So I think we did cover that a lot, like the woman's role in the Father's plan. So we can go to the next question. How might a man's understanding and conviction of a woman's role dramatically impact the eternal well-being of children, families, and women?
You read that very well, Carly.
Sorry, guys, I also have a concussion, so I've been like struggling along like reading.
Really?
So I'm just so if I'm not making sense when I'm talking, just like start signaling me. Like,
no, you're fine. Sometimes these questions are really wordy, I think.
Yeah.
So, you're doing great.
Thanks.
I think if a man understands the importance of a woman's role, it will help him understand the importance of his own role as a husband and a father, because I think that each gender has a heavy load to carry and a heavy responsibility to each other and to the children that they bring into the world. And so when he understands that she has a lot to do, then he will, be more appreciative and can be more loving and helpful. And I think the same for a wife. If she understands, that the stress that comes with providing for a family, then I feel like when my husband works so hard, I love being able to have him come home to a home-cooked meal or a clean apartment, because it's just a simple act that I can do to show my appreciation for the hard work that he does. And I know he wants to work hard when he sees that I am also trying to pull my own weight in our marriage and in our family.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines, I asked my husband what kept him safe, like all of the years, because he was 27 when we got married, and he never got into pornography or any of that. And I asked him, well, what kept you safe? And he said, every time I was tempted, I researched womanhood in the scriptures. And I thought that was really interesting.
Wow.
And he said that the more that he researched womanhood, the more he gained respect, love, and appreciation for womanhood. And he even gave in Sacrament meeting, he gave an amazing talk about how womanhood and priesthood are like two sides of a coin. The coin isn't worth anything unless both are on there, And I think just what you were saying, Abby, is by recognizing that, respecting it, researching both aspects, you're able to help them better. You're able to combat temptations, is by researching and then acting.
That is so beautiful, Chriselle. Thank you.
I think, kind of I kind of already talked about it, but like another way, just knowing what each other's roles are. Like if someone's kind of struggling, like there's more important areas like to be focusing on, then they're able to also kind of help pick up and kind of help encourage you in areas that you may be struggling in or that are difficult for you. And like right now, like we're down like half our employees at work, so I'm like having to work 40 hours a week when I'm used to working like 15. And so it's just throwing me off, and my husband's like, Chantel, it's okay, like just encourage me, like you can do it, you can do school, like hey, tonight I'll cook dinner, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like do your other responsibilities that you have. And I think that helps. Like knowing what each other's roles are helps to equal out when things kind of go unbalanced. It helps you kind of gain
Balance back.
like, yeah, thank you. I'm like, I can't think of the word.
Yeah.
My husband and I are going through kind of an interesting couple of weeks. I ended up coming to Utah to help my parents, and he's in Pennsylvania, and I'm trying to get school done, and work is just so stressful for him right now. And I just feel like we are so far away from each other, and even though we don't, I just feel like there's such a void in our lives because we can't be with each other right now, and how important we are to each other. Even though we talk on the phone, there's just something about being with each other.
There's a connecting. There's like this invisible cord, something
Yeah.
really connects you to your spouse that's like intense.
Yeah. Especially when you're struggling.
Yeah.
My husband's had to work out of town a lot this semester too, and so like just like that, like just the simplest little phone call is like the best thing. And then when they come home or whatever, like it's a huge deal, and you don't recognize it until you have it and you know that special bond and what you do for each other.
So the last question is, the Savior said that in the last days, even the very elect shall be deceived. How can we avoid being deceived by the world's philosophies of men and women's roles?
It's by holding on to the prophet. No matter what your political or your knowledge or your educational experience, you have to put that all aside and realize, what, I'm going to follow whatever the prophet says. That I think is going to be huge with holding on, with not being deceived.
In DNC, I don't have the exact verses. I have it written in my notes somewhere, but it talks about, how the very elect will fall away, and then a few verses before it tells us that we have to treasure up his word, and that is how we can protect ourselves from being deceived. And we have to, and by treasuring up his word, we have to study the scriptures and listen to the prophet and obey, and it can't just be a casual thing. It has to be something that we truly take into our hearts and really treasure them more than like anything else. Because I think so often for me it's easy to read a book and then kind of read my scriptures and put them on the same level, or even like be more into the book I'm reading. And I know that when I'm doing that, I'm not treasuring up the Word of God. And that is the only way for me to protect myself from being deceived. And so that's something I have to work on.
That was very nice.
I had a family home meeting with my two kids that live here in Utah on Sunday, and we were talking about spirituality and testimonies, and I asked the question, what can we do to strengthen our spirituality? And my son said, avoid those things that cause you to question. And I thought that was really interesting, because sometimes this has been hard in this class to be faced with so much opposition, looking at the other side so much. But I really think that's true. I've seen two really good families in our ward fall away because they started reading, anti-Mormon literature and not avoiding the poison.
I think it's important to be sure that you're living in a way that you have the Spirit with you at all times. So when you do read things like, what women know, you can understand that there is truth, but then you can tell the difference of when you go and read mothers who know, and you have that feeling, you felt that the Spirit confirming that that is the truth, that that is the gospel of Christ. So it's important to always have the Spirit with you so you can tell apart the two, the world doctrine and the doctrine of Jesus Christ.
I have a friend that suggested every morning that she gets up and in her prayers, she talks about putting on the whole armor of God, and goes through the different parts of the armor. And it's interesting because I've done that somewhat, and really if you start the day thinking that you're armored with the gospel, it's amazing what difference it makes. And I interrupted you, Chantel, I'm sorry.
You're fine. I think just another way is like reading that talk by Sister Beck. Like I could only imagine like when times get worse and that things are being more deceived and that we're getting lazier or whatnot. Like imagine if she put like mothers and fathers are responsible for caring for children and like kind of put it in there, then we might put it off like, well, then he can do it then. Versus like helping us like in this, it's a good reminder that no, like it really is our responsibility. It's the mother's responsibility. It's not, yeah, they can help, but because it's only going to get worse that people
It's our
are
divine
getting lazy.
divine inheritance. That's part of the talents that we were born with, is nurturing. Like that's the biggest difference between attributes of the physical world and the attributes of the spiritual world. Is the physical world, you could be a male and be a hairdresser, like that doesn't bother me, like whatever, or a woman mechanic, that doesn't distinguish whether or not, who you are. It's your divine attributes. It's the perceptions you bring. It's the inherent, nurturing that you bring into whatever you're doing, that makes us divine.
And I don't think we ever need to look at this as women are the nurturers. Women are more responsible for that nurturing aspect of a home, and fathers for the providing. But I love watching young couples where the husband he's playing with the children, he's changing the babies, he's feeding the babies, he isn't as involved in that baby's life as the mother is. And is that wrong because that's not his responsibility? Absolutely not. And nor is it. I think even if a woman has to work to make ends meet, is that wrong? But if a woman stays home and doesn't have to work, she can be prudent with her money, with the money, and there's so many ways that we do both things. I don't think it's this is your job, this is my job. This is your responsibility, this is your responsibility. These things both need to happen to build a great home.
Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.
See ya, Abby.
Bye.
So that's the last question. Does someone want to recap what we talked about today?
Sure, I will. I haven't done anything for a while. So we discussed both of the sides and which side we agreed with on as far as Sister Beck or what women know. And I think we all concluded that what women know was approached with an attitude of fighting and maybe a little bit of guilt and justification for what they have chosen to do in their lives, and that they basically didn't address the issues but were kind of skirting them. And then we talked about the roles of how we're influenced by Heavenly Father's, what His view of our roles are, and that it's a great plan. And then we talked about men's opinions and how their opinion on womanhood would affect us, families eternally. And as they study and learn about womanhood and honor it, it strengthens the families. And then we talked about ways to strengthen our own spirituality so that we can be in tune with our role as women and mothers. Would you like to add anything to that?
I think you got it.
Would your children like to add anything, Chriselle?
Yes, it would. It would. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast.